Welcome to Zido Sleepy Stories. We're thrilled to have you here for another cozy tale to spark your imagination. If you enjoy our stories, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your friends and family. Your support helps us keep the bedtime magic alive. Now grab your blanket, get comfy, and let's dive into tonight's story. Good evening, dear friend. My name is Andy. If this is your first time here, I want you to know, truly know, that you are so very welcome. And if you've visited before, well, I'm glad to have you back, like an old friend returning to the porch, just as the lanterns are being lit. Each night, more of you arrive with tired minds and restless hearts, searching for something soft and still. And it fills me with quiet joy to know that these stories are helping you find your way to rest. So tonight, I've prepared something special. A journey, yes, but not just any journey. One that begins not in the ordinary world, but in a place woven between time and dreams. But before we step aboard, let's take a moment to pause, to leave behind the day that was, to let the noise soften, like waves withdrawing from the shore. Right now, wherever you are, whether you're nestled in bed, wrapped in a blanket, or simply listening with closed eyes, I invite you to join me in a small ritual. Let's breathe. Take a slow, gentle inhale. Through your nose, fill your lungs. And now exhale. Just as slowly. Again, inhale. And as you do, imagine gathering all the tension of your day. Hold it just for a moment. And then exhale, letting it melt away into the night air. Inhale. Calm. Exhale. Release. One more time now, just like that. And now, allow your breath to return to its natural rhythm. Quiet, effortless, present. I'd like you to imagine your breath now has a color. Any color that feels soft to you. Perhaps it's a cool lavender or a warm golden amber. Maybe it's the silvery blue of moonlight on water. As you breathe in, picture that color gently flowing through you. It moves like silk, soothing your muscles, your thoughts, your bones. It gathers in the places where tension likes to hide and gently dissolves it. And on each exhale, imagine a different color, maybe smoky gray or deep navy, leaving your body carrying with it the weight of the day. Stress, overthinking, worry, all floating away. There's nothing to do now, nowhere you need to be. You've arrived in this moment, and that is enough. I'll take it from here. Tonight I'll be your conductor, not of a train, not quite, but of a journey, a story, a shared dream, and our destination. A small, forgotten station at the edge of the known world, a place that doesn't appear on maps or schedules. It doesn't run on fuel or time or logic. No. This place runs on something far more gentle. It runs on longing, on the hush of twilight, on the soft hope that maybe, just maybe, tonight you'll sleep a little deeper than before. They call it the train station of dreams. It sits quietly on the far end of a sleepy village, nestled near the sea. During the day, it looks almost abandoned. Peeling paint, ivy along the eaves, and a crooked sign swaying in the wind. Most passers-by think it's closed or forgotten, but at 8 o'clock sharp every evening, something shifts. A lantern flickers to life on the platform. The air begins to hum. The stars above seem to draw a little closer, and those who know, those who need it, begin to arrive. You won't find it unless you're ready. You don't need a ticket. You don't even need your shoes. All you need is a tired heart and the willingness to believe in the quiet magic of nighttime. The station master is a man named Mr. Bellamy, a kind soul with snow-white hair and a voice like a cello in winter. He never says much, but he sees everything. When you arrive, he nods, gently lifts his lantern, and leads you down the platform. Tonight, as you listen to this story, imagine yourself there. The station is quiet. The platform glows with soft golden light. Rain begins to patter on the old tin roof, not hard, just enough to soothe your thoughts. The wind smells faintly of salt and something sweet, like old paper and warm vanilla. You look up and see the train. 10 cars long, each one different. One looks like a garden under glass, another like a cabin from your childhood. One has a starry dome for a roof. Another looks like it was carved out of driftwood. The train doesn't rush. It doesn't jolt or clang. It simply waits. Because here, you're never late. The doors open with a whisper, and you step inside. But we'll save that part for later. For now, stay with the breath. Stay with the hush. Stay with this warm and gentle night. Because you are safe now. You are welcome here. And this train, this story, this dream is just beginning. Good night, dear traveller, and welcome aboard. The night had settled in like a soft velvet curtain, draping gently over the village, dimming the last golden lights behind cottage windows. Far beyond the edge of the cobblestone streets, past the old well and the ivy-covered post office, stood a quiet little train station. You wouldn't notice it during the day. It hid in plain sight. Its name, the Dream Station, had long been worn away from the wooden sign that swung above the entrance, barely visible beneath a mossy overhang. But to those who needed it most, it called, not with noise, but with something gentler, a hush, a stillness, a feeling that somewhere something was waiting for you. Tonight, the station lanterns flickered to life one by one, as if being lit by invisible hands. Warm golden light spilled across the rain-speckled platform. The sound of the falling droplets echoed in rhythm with the ticking of an old brass clock mounted above the ticket window. Though, truth be told, no tickets had been sold here in years. There were no signs, no announcements, and yet they arrived. 3 quiet figures stepped onto the platform, each drawn there by something they could not quite name. The first was Elliot. He was tall and thoughtful, with a constellation of freckles across his cheeks and a notebook always tucked beneath his arm. Elliot was a newcomer to the village, having arrived just 2 weeks earlier, seeking solitude after a long, chaotic stretch of life in the city. He had always loved the stars. As a boy, he used to climb onto the roof of his grandmother's house to watch the night sky, imagining he could trace his future in the constellations. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten how to look up, until tonight. As he stepped onto the Dream Station platform, Elliot looked skyward, and the stars looked back. The second traveller was Clara. Clara had lived in the village her whole life. She ran a tiny flower shop by the bakery, where she sold lavender bundles and tiny pressed violets in glass frames. She rarely left the village, content in her small routines and gentle days. But Clara hadn't been sleeping lately, not since the storm last month. Her thoughts had grown restless, like vines creeping across a garden wall. And so, when she saw the glow of the lanterns from her window tonight, she put on her warmest shawl and walked into the rain. She didn't know where the train was going, but she hoped it would take her somewhere. Still, And then came Mr. Lyle, who was the oldest man in the village, perhaps older than the station itself, with a kind face lined by time and a long grey coat that smelled faintly of cedar and tobacco. Mr. Lyle had once been a cartographer. His maps, drawn by hand in careful ink, had once hung in museums and libraries across the coast, but now he walked slowly, leaning on a wooden cane carved with tiny stars. He came to the station every Thursday night, rain or shine, not to travel, just to listen. He believed, perhaps rightly, that the train whispered secrets to those who paid attention. Tonight, the whispers were louder than ever. The three of them stood in a kind of quiet communion. The platform was nearly silent, save for the soft spatter of rain on the roof and the distant creak of the trees swaying in the wind. And then, it arrived. The dream train. It didn't appear with a roar or a whistle or even a clang. It simply was there, like it had always been there, like the night had gently unwrapped it. The train was unlike anything they had ever seen. Each car was different. One glowed like a glass greenhouse. One looked like a forest with living trees. One shimmered silver blue like moonlight over a frozen lake. And one, Elliot swore, looked like a library he had dreamed of as a child but had never seen in waking life. The doors opened with a soft sigh, as though the train itself was exhaling, welcoming its passengers with deep relief. And there he stood, Mr. Bellamy, the station master. His coat was long and dark, his white hair curled behind his ears like old waves. In one hand, he held a lantern that seemed to glow not with fire, but with memory. He didn't speak. He only nodded. He looked at Elliot and pointed to a car with a starry dome. He looked at Clara and gestured gently toward the glasshouse car, filled with mist and blossoms, and to Mr. Lyle. He tipped his hat and opened the door to a car that looked just like a lighthouse keeper's cabin, weathered wood, rope shelves, and a quiet porthole window that faced nothing but open sky. They stepped inside, one by one, without hesitation, because somehow they knew this was not just a train. This was a passage, a lullaby, a place between places where weary hearts were gently carried toward rest. The lanterns dimmed, the clock stopped ticking, the rain fell softer now, and the train began to hum, not loudly, not quickly, just enough to take them gently forward, deeper into the dream. And so their journey began. But for now, dear listener, you don't need to follow them just yet. You too are here at the station. You too are safe. Close your eyes if you haven't already, and let the gentle rhythm of the rain and the quiet breath of the dream train carry you softly into sleep. We'll meet again soon, in part 3. The train moved, or at least it felt like it did. There was no jolt, no clattering wheels, no shrill whistle to announce its journey. Instead, it was as if the world itself had shifted slightly to the left, just enough to carry the dream train forward into the space between wakefulness and sleep. Inside, the air was warm and still, with the faintest scent of old parchment, distant rain, and something sweet, like honeyed tea left to steep in silence. And in this hush, the dream carriages began to reveal themselves. Elliot stepped into his carriage, and the door closed behind him with a gentle sigh. He looked up and gasped. The entire ceiling of the car was a glass dome, stretching high and wide, opening into a velvet black sky freckled with stars. The stars shimmered, not with cold, distant light, but with memory, like pinpricks in time. Constellations he didn't recognize pulsed gently above him. shifting ever so slightly as the train glided on. At the center of the room stood a worn leather chair beneath an old brass telescope, and beside it, a book, a navy blue cover with gold embossed letters that spelled The Atlas of Forgotten Constellations. Elliot picked it up carefully. It was warm in his hands, oddly comforting, like something familiar, yet long lost. He sat down, opened to the first page, and began to read. There are stars that only appear once every 1,000 years, and dreams that only arrive when the soul is still. As he read, the stars above seemed to respond. One blinked gently, another shifted its place. His eyes softened, his shoulders relaxed, and slowly, Elliot leaned back into the chair, his mind drifting far beyond the carriage, into a sky that had always been waiting for him. Clara entered her carriage, her shawl damp from the walk through the rain, but inside everything was warm and alive. The carriage had no roof, just a canopy of climbing wisteria and moonflowers that glowed faintly in the dark. The walls were made of ivy and moss, and a little stream flowed along one side of the floor, its trickling sound gentle and rhythmic. Fireflies blinked in the corners. A gentle wind rustled the leaves, and right in the center of the carriage, a hammock made of vines, swaying softly between two blossoming trees. Waiting on the hammock was a book. Its cover was green, soft like velvet, and embossed with silver ivy leaves. The title read, Whispers from the Wind Garden. Clara smiled for the first time in days. She sat on the hammock, which cradled her like a mother would a tired child, and opened the book. Some gardens are not made of soil and seed, but of breath and memory, and the quiet need to heal. With every word she read, Clara felt a weight lifting from her chest. The flowers above seemed to bloom wider. The air smelled sweeter. A soft breeze kissed her cheek, and a dandelion seed drifted across her hand. Her eyes fluttered. She didn't mean to sleep, but the story wrapped around her like a warm quilt, and the garden watched over her. Mr. Lyle's carriage was simple. Wooden walls, a rope-hung lantern swaying gently above, and a small round window that showed nothing but open stars and sea. The floor creaked softly beneath his boots, and the air smelled of salt, cedar, and old adventure. He took a slow breath. In the corner of the cabin was a chair by a wood-burning stove. On a nearby shelf sat a weathered book, its spine cracked and faded. He didn't need to read the title. He'd seen it before. The Lighthouse Keeper's Journal. He sat down with a quiet grunt, opened the book, and smiled. The sea does not rush. It rocks. It waits. And those who live beside it learn to wait too. He turned page after page, the soft scratch of his fingers on paper blending with the crackling of the stove. Outside the window, he imagined waves brushing against the rocks, seagulls crying out in the mist, and the lonely rhythm of the lighthouse beacon swinging across the night. But in here, he was not lonely. He was home. And the journal, once written by a stranger, now felt like his own. He closed his eyes and drifted, not backward in time, but gently, inward. Outside, the dream train moved through rain and starlight. The world around it shimmered and shifted. Rolling hills became floating islands. Foggy moors turned to golden fields, and clouds curled like ribbon around the tracks. But inside the carriages, there was no urgency, no destination, just rest, just quiet, just the safe unfolding of stories long needed. And as each passenger surrendered to their own sacred sleep, the train continued on, carrying dreams like lanterns through the velvet night. Sleep well, dear traveller. We'll visit the next car soon. But tonight, let your thoughts wander, like Elliot among the stars, like Clara among the petals, like Mr. Lyle among the tides. You're safe now, and the dream station will always be here, waiting. The dream train moved without tracks. It didn't follow maps or timetables or rules made for the daylight world. It drifted gently, as if guided by the hush between thoughts, gliding through realms stitched together by memory, imagination, and moonlight. Outside the window panes of the sleeping carriages, the world had changed. Gone were the fields and forests of the waking village. Now the train drifted through something softer, stranger, more beautiful. It began with a forest of glass, trees with trunks like crystal columns, their branches adorned with leaves made of translucent silver. As the train passed through, the glass leaves chimed ever so faintly in the wind, each note delicate and musical, like wind chimes hung in the corridors of the sky. The rain had turned to mist here. It curled gently along the rails, glowing faintly blue in the lantern light. The mist seemed almost alive, parting softly before the train as though it had been expecting them. No one saw it, but the train saw it, and the train remembered. Then came the floating islands, dozens, perhaps hundreds, of gentle land masses, each no larger than a small garden, drifting quietly in the midnight air. Some had trees, some had tiny houses. One had a single rocking chair, rocking on its own, facing nothing but stars. The train wound slowly between them, and if you had looked closely, you might have seen soft figures asleep on some of those islands. Dreamers, perhaps, or memories of dreamers wrapped in sleep, resting in places only the train could reach. The stars above reflected perfectly in the pools below, mirror images that shimmered like the last thoughts before sleep. The dream train slowed slightly, as if paying its respects. Then it continued. In one moment, the train passed over an ocean made entirely of cloud, soft, rolling, endless cloud. Not white, but painted in the hues of dreams, lavender, dusky rose, pale indigo, and golden peach, the kind of colors you remember just after waking from something beautiful, but can never quite describe. Seabirds, made of light and vapor, glided alongside the train, their wings silent, their flight effortless. Some passengers stirred slightly in their sleep, smiles brushing their faces, their dreams syncing with the rhythm of the journey. Elliot, beneath his constellation dome, whispered something in his sleep. Clara shifted, a flower petal falling from her lap. Mr. Lyle's finger gently marked the page of his journal, as if, even in slumber, he was taking notes on the journey. Then came the bridge. It stretched out across a chasm not of rock or water, but of silence. Pure, complete, sacred silence. The kind of silence that holds you, that lets you breathe deeply without interruption, that invites you to release. The bridge was made of starlight and cobblestone, an impossible thing. But here, in the in-between, impossibility was simply another shade of wonder. As the train glided across, the lights within each carriage dimmed slightly, just enough for passengers to sleep even deeper, as if the train itself knew that crossing silence required reverence. It did not rush, it did not rumble, it floated, like breath, like trust, like peace. And then the clouds returned, gently, softly, wrapping the train like a blanket, a lullaby made of fog. The glass windows fogged ever so slightly. The hum of the engine lowered to a whisper. Andy's voice, steady and warm, returns now, quietly. You've travelled far tonight, dear one. not in miles, but in softness, in surrender, in sleep. You may not have noticed the dreamscape as it passed by. That's all right. Your body knew, your breath knew, your spirit came aboard, even if your thoughts drifted elsewhere. The train station of dreams does not need permission. It simply arrives when you need it most. And tonight, it has brought you here, to this gentle, sacred space between thoughts, between wake and rest, where stars remember your name and clouds clear a path just for you. So rest now. Let your body grow heavier. Let the images swirl and soften like mist rising from morning fields. Let the train carry you farther still, toward places where stories unfold in silence, and your deepest dreams wait patiently to be remembered. You are safe, you are carried, you are not alone, and this journey is only just beginning. We'll explore more soon, but for now, breathe, sleep, let go. The train is gliding on, and you are exactly where you need to be. Good night, dear traveller. Outside the dream train, the world had vanished into clouds and moonlight. Inside, the passengers slept. Not the restless sleep of a weary body, but the deep, nourishing kind. The kind that pulls you gently inward, like an ocean current, soft and slow and sure. And within each carriage, something was beginning. Not a dream in the usual sense, but a story, a journey, a healing. Elliot floated in darkness, but it wasn't frightening. It was warm, like the inside of a wool coat, like being held. Above him, stars, thousands, millions, but one pulsed brighter than the rest, soft golden white, almost shy. He drifted toward it. It felt familiar. Suddenly he was no longer floating, but standing in a field under a vast open sky. The same field he used to visit as a boy with his grandfather. The grass swayed around his ankles. Fireflies blinked nearby. And there, on a picnic blanket, was his younger self. Freckles, notebook, wide eyes staring at the constellations. The boy looked up and smiled. Elliot knelt beside him. "Do you still look for them?" the boy asked. "The stars?" Elliot swallowed. "I forgot how." The boy nodded, then pointed to the sky. "That one is yours," he said. "You named it when you were 7. You said it would watch over you when you got lost." Elliot looked up. The golden star pulsed again. "I thought I'd lost it," he whispered. "No," said the boy. "You just stopped looking." The field faded, but the warmth remained. And Elliot, floating once more in the quiet of space, smiled. He remembered. Clara wandered through dew-drenched grass. The sun was rising, low and honey-coloured, brushing everything with gold. She was barefoot. The earth beneath her feet was soft and cool. Around her, a garden unlike any she had ever seen, wild and endless. Roses growing beside willow trees, lavender curling through fields of ferns, tulips dancing with butterflies in the breeze. But it wasn't the flowers that brought tears to her eyes. It was the stillness. The garden wasn't trying to be beautiful. It just was, untamed, unapologetic, alive. She walked through an archway of vines and came upon a stone bench with a teacup waiting for her. Steam curled from the surface. Beside it sat a journal. She picked it up and opened to a single handwritten line. "You are not broken. You are blooming." Her chest tightened. Something she'd been holding cracked open just a little. The storm, the worry, the weight, it softened. She sat on the bench. The tea was exactly how she liked it, though she had never told anyone. A petal fell into her lap, and Clara closed her eyes, surrounded by the wild peace of the garden she didn't know she needed. Mr. Lyle stood at the top of the spiral staircase, wind tugging gently at his long coat. The lighthouse lantern glowed beside him, casting circles of light across the sea below. Waves shimmered like silk. He placed his hand on the rusted railing, feeling the familiar chill of salt and iron. This was a memory. His lighthouse, his post, all those decades ago. But tonight, it was different. Tonight, the light turned inward, as if the lantern were not warning ships of rocks, but searching within his own heart, illuminating shadows long forgotten. He descended the stairs. Each step brought a memory. His first map, drawn in pencil under candlelight. His first love, laughing in the kitchen, flower on her nose. The night he left the city. The night he came to the village. The night he let go of who he thought he had to be. At the bottom of the tower was a table. On it, a fresh sheet of parchment, a compass, and a quill. Mr. Lyle sat down and began to draw. Not a map of the world, a map of himself. And when he finished, he smiled. It was the most honest map he had ever made. Outside, the dream train curved slowly through the clouds, its lights glowing like fireflies in the dark. The passengers slept, each cradled in their own sacred space. And though they were alone in their dreams, somehow they weren't. Somehow they were sharing something, a quiet knowing, a recognition, a soft thread that ran through all of them, the thread of healing, of memory, of gentle return. Andy's voice returns now, softer than before, like a whisper under your pillow. Sometimes we don't need a destination, just a pause, a place where the soul can catch its breath. The train station of dreams is that place. So rest now, traveller. Let the story wash over you like rain on a roof. You are on the train. The wheels are turning, the stars are watching, and you are deeply, peacefully asleep. Good night, dreamer. The dream train hummed softly, like an old lullaby being remembered, its rhythm steady, its breath slow. Through cloud and starlight, it moved quietly onward, winding through constellations and memory wrapped in mist and moonlit hush. Inside the carriages, Elliot, Clara, and Mr. Lyle slept deeply, each wrapped in their own quiet stories, their dreams still unfolding like petals after a soft rain. But somewhere near the middle of the train, something shifted. It was not loud, it was not alarming, it was simply new. At the end of the corridor between the garden car and the observatory car, a door had appeared. It was not there before, not when the passengers boarded, not when the train departed the station. And yet, now, in the soft hush of sleep, it stood quietly in the hallway, as if it had always been waiting. It was made of deep wood, rich and dark, with delicate carvings of swirling clouds and climbing vines. In its center, a small brass handle shaped like a sleeping fox. No sign, no window, no sound, just presence. A door that did not ask for attention, but somehow invited it. The kind of door you only noticed if you were meant to. And on this night, someone did. Avery was not a regular traveller. In fact, she hadn't planned to board the dream train at all. She was simply walking through her village, lost in thought, after another sleepless night. She passed the old station and noticed the lantern glowing. She was curious. She stepped inside, and the train had waited for her. Avery now stood barefoot in the hallway, her cotton robe brushing her ankles, her eyes fixed on the door that hadn't been there before. She tilted her head, listening. There was no sound behind it, but there was a feeling, not fear, not urgency, just a quiet wondering. She reached out and placed her fingers on the brass fox. It was warm, and as she turned the handle, the door opened with a sigh. The space beyond was unlike the other carriages. It wasn't a room. It was a sky within the train. Avery stepped forward and found herself walking on soft, pale clouds. Above her, the ceiling shimmered like water reflecting stars. All around, the air pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. And floating ahead of her, gently swaying on a string of light, was a key. Small, silver, simple. It glowed faintly, as if lit from within. She stepped closer. Beneath the key, a message appeared in glowing script. No ink, no paper, just shimmering letters hanging in the air. For the part of you that you forgot. A key to something still waiting, Avery reached out. The key was light in her palm, almost weightless. But as her fingers closed around it, she felt something shift, not in the room, but within her. A quiet recognition. Something long locked away, stirred. She didn't cry, but her eyes softened. The kind of softness that comes when a truth brushes gently against the edge of your heart. A truth you're not quite ready to name, but are ready to feel. And then, just as quietly as it had arrived, the dream dissolved. Avery found herself back in her bed, beneath a soft blanket, the sound of rain whispering outside her window. But something was different. In her hand, there was nothing, but in her chest, there was a key, not made of metal, but of memory, of meaning, of some gentle door inside her, now waiting to be opened. Back on the dream train, the mystery lingered. The door was gone, but perhaps it hadn't truly vanished. Perhaps it was simply traveling again, waiting for the next soul who needed it. The train curved gently through a spiral of light, and Andy's voice returned, softer than ever. Some doors are not made of wood or metal. Some doors live inside us, and when we're ready, they open. So rest now, dear traveler. You don't need to find your door tonight. It will find you when the moment is quiet and the breath is deep. For now, you are safe. You are still. And the train carries you gently forward, toward dreams not yet dreamed, and stories still unfolding. Good night, soft soul. The train glided through darkness. Not the kind of darkness that frightens, but the kind that comforts. Like a warm blanket pulled over your shoulders. Like the hush that falls over a room just before a dream begins. The clouds had parted, revealing an ocean of stars above and below, stretching endlessly in every direction. And in the observatory carriage, beneath a glass dome etched with constellations, Elliot stirred. His eyelids fluttered. He inhaled slowly, deeply, as if the air itself was made of memory. And then, he opened his eyes. For a moment, he didn't move. He simply lay there, staring up at the stars. They were still there, still watching, still waiting. But something was different now. They were closer. He sat up slowly, the atlas of forgotten constellations still resting on his lap. The pages were open to a part he didn't remember turning to. A hand-drawn star map spanned the page with delicate, glowing ink. But the map wasn't of the sky above. It was a map of the inside of the train, car by car, drawn in incredible detail. His observatory, Clara's garden, Mr. Lyle's lighthouse, and even the hallway with a door that hadn't been there before. And at the very center of the map was a name, the station between stars. No other description, no directions, just a compass rose pointing inward. Elliot frowned slightly, his fingers brushing over the page, and then he noticed the dome above him was shifting. The constellations were rearranging themselves. Lines of soft white light formed between stars, gently sketching a new pattern in the sky. It looked like a spiral, or maybe a keyhole, or maybe both. As he watched, one star in the very center pulsed gently, rhythmically, like a beacon. And suddenly, the train began to slow. Outside, the dream train drifted toward what looked like a floating station suspended in space, resting on nothing at all. No platform, no ground. Just a beautiful structure of glass and brass, held up by starlight and belief. It was shaped like a compass rose, with arms extending in every direction. The windows glowed softly, and the station shimmered faintly, half there, half elsewhere, as if it existed more in memory than matter. The station between stars. Elliot stood now, his bare feet pressing gently on the warm wood floor of the observatory car. He walked to the glass wall and placed a hand against it. His breath caught. The stars outside were moving, spiraling slowly around the station, drawn to it, like a cosmic current. There was no sound, but inside his chest, he felt a hum, a knowing. He wasn't sure what he was meant to do next, but he knew something important was waiting, and elsewhere on the train. Others were beginning to stir. Clara, curled beneath a blanket of flowering vines, opened one eye and blinked at the soft golden light seeping through the edges of her garden car. Mr. Lyle, still seated in his lighthouse cabin, gently closed his journal, as if sensing the train had arrived at a moment worthy of stillness. Even Avery, who hadn't boarded with intention, sat up in her sleep, the feeling of a key still warm in her hand. Andy's voice returns now, floating softly through the air like a breeze through open curtains. Not all stations are made to stop at. Some are made to remember, some are made to awaken, and so the dream train paused. Not at a destination, but at a turning point. Not a place to leave, but a place to look inward, a place where the stars themselves seem to whisper, "Remember who you are." Elliot stood in the observatory, bathed in soft light, staring at the impossible station outside, the book still in his hand, the map still glowing. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of his heart, a door gently creaked open, not loudly, not fully, just enough for something old to return. Wonder. Outside, the train rested. Inside, no one rushed. This moment was not made for rushing. It was made for listening, for breathing, for gently awakening. And so, the night continued, not louder, but deeper. Sleep well, dear traveller. We're not done yet, but tonight, you are closer than you've ever been to something old, something forgotten, something yours. And the train, it's still waiting, exactly as it should be. Good night, stargazer. The dream train sat still, hovering beside the celestial station, wrapped in a velvet hush. And within the glass-roofed garden car, Clara stirred. A soft breeze brushed her cheek. She blinked her eyes open slowly, the scent of wild jasmine and damp earth wrapping gently around her like a warm shawl. Above her, moonflowers bloomed wider, as if they too had just awakened. Her hammock swayed slightly, creaking ever so faintly in the still air. And then she saw them. Petals. Pale, glowing petals, scattered in a soft trail across the mossy floor, like a path of light. They hadn't been there before. Clara sat up slowly, rubbing her palms together to ground herself. There was no urgency, only quiet invitation. So barefoot and curious, she rose from the hammock and began to follow. The petals led her past the trickling stream, under an archway of lilac and silver ivy, and toward a part of the carriage she'd never noticed before. A stone doorway stood there now, round, weathered, ancient-looking, covered in vines. At its center, a soft engraving shimmered into view as she approached. To enter, leave nothing behind but fear. Clara paused. Then she placed one hand on the vines, and the doorway opened like a breath. Beyond it, a second garden. Not wilder, not prettier, just different, quieter, older. This garden was made not of just flowers and trees, but of memory. There was a stone bench where her mother used to sit, a weathered wooden swing, just like the one from her childhood backyard. A tea table covered in moss, holding a cup that looked exactly like the one she used to drink from on rainy afternoons, reading under a quilt. The air shimmered softly, as though everything was suspended between time and tenderness. And then she saw her, a young woman, not a stranger, but Clara. Clara, years ago. Eyes bright, smile wide, barefoot in the wet grass. Alive in a way Clara hadn't felt in, well, she didn't know how long. The younger Clara turned toward her and smiled. "Hi," she said softly. Clara swallowed, her voice caught in her throat. "You remember me?" she finally whispered. "You were never forgotten," the younger version replied. "Just buried. Beneath lists and worries and everyone else's needs." They sat together on the mossy bench. No rush, no rules, no ticking clock. Only time enough for remembering. The younger Clara reached into the pocket of her soft linen dress and pulled out a single item. A seed, shimmering gold. "I saved this for you," she said, "but you had to come back for it." Clara took the seed, her fingers trembling slightly. She could feel warmth in it. Life, possibility. "What do I do with it?" she asked. "Plant it," the younger her said, "wherever you need to grow." And just like that, the younger Clara began to fade, her image softening like mist in sunlight. Not disappearing, just returning, becoming part of her again. Clara stood in the center of the memory garden, the seed glowing in her palm. She knelt down beside a quiet patch of earth, pressed her fingers into the soil, planted it, and as soon as her hand covered the seed, the ground shimmered softly. A single green sprout emerged, delicate, but alive. It was enough, more than enough. Behind her, the doorway reopened, framed with moonlight. She turned, stepping back through, past the trail of petals, past the stream, and into her waiting hammock. As she settled in, the vines above gently lowered a canopy of wisteria over her once more. She smiled and exhaled, not because she was tired, but because something inside her had let go. Something old, something tight, had finally loosened. Outside, the dream train stirred again. It began to move slowly, drifting away from the station between stars. The passengers, Elliot, Clara, Mr., Lyle, Avery, lay deep in sleep once more. But something had changed. Not loud, not dramatic, just soft shifts beneath the surface, tiny awakenings that would bloom in time. Andy's voice returns now, tender as candlelight. Sometimes healing comes not from adding more, but from remembering what was already yours. A garden within a garden, a self within the self. So sleep now, gentle soul. Let your body rest. Let your breath be soft. You've planted something tonight, and when the time is right, it will bloom. Good night, sweet gardener. The dream train drifted onward, the celestial station now a distant shimmer in the dark, fading like the memory of a dream upon waking. Inside the lighthouse carriage, Mr. Lyle lay in his chair, a thin wool blanket draped over his knees, his journal resting open on his chest. The cabin glowed softly with amber light from the swaying lantern above. The room smelled of salt air and cedar wood, and the gentle creak of the wooden floorboards matched the rhythm of the waves in the distance. And then, a sound, faint at first, but unmistakable. A bell, a boy bell, low, slow, echoing. Ding, ding, ding. Mister. Lyle's eyes opened. He hadn't heard that bell in decades. Not since the night he left the coast. Not since the night he stopped believing that time could carry anything but loss. He sat up slowly. The journal fell gently to the floor, pages fluttering. He stood, legs slightly stiff, but strong, and he listened again. Ding, ding. The sound echoed through the cabin, not from outside, but from within, from behind the wooden panel at the end of the room, where a window used to be. But now, there was a door, one that hadn't been there before. A small round porthole sat in its centre, glowing softly with the silver light of an unseen sea. Mr. Lyle walked to it without hesitation. There was no fear in his step, only quiet knowing. The door opened before he touched it, and he stepped through. He found himself standing on the edge of an endless shoreline, the sky above a stormy mix of midnight blues and charcoal grey, but the sea, oh the sea, was calm, still, reflective, as if it remembered every soul that had ever stood before it. The wind was soft and familiar, the air smelled of rain and memory, and far off in the mist, he saw her, a figure, kneeling in the sand, drawing something. He walked toward her, each step sinking slightly into the damp sand, his heartbeat louder than the waves. As he neared, she looked up. Marianne, his wife. Gone now for many years. Her eyes sparkled like they always had, laughing even when she wasn't, smiling. She said nothing, just nodded once, as if to say, "You made it." He knelt beside her. She was drawing a map, not of a place, but of a feeling. Lines and symbols traced in the sand with seashells, echoing shapes he recognized but had never dared to draw himself. "Why am I here?" he asked softly. "To remember," she said, gently pressing her palm to the center of the map. "To return." He felt a lump rise in his throat. "I didn't want to forget you," he said. "You never did," she whispered. "You only forgot how to let me live beside you, rather than behind you." The tide crept closer. Marianne stood. She placed a small compass in his hand. Simple, worn. Its needle didn't point north. It pointed inward. Mr. Lyle blinked. She was gone. But the warmth of her hand remained in his, and he understood. He had spent years mapping the world, but tonight he had drawn the only map that mattered, the one that leads home. He turned back toward the door, the shoreline fading behind him. The buoy bell rang once more, then dissolved into wind, and just like that, he was back in his cabin, the blanket around his legs, the journal on the floor, the lantern above swaying gently, but now, on the table before him, sat the compass, real, solid, and pointing not away, but within. Outside, the dream train entered a soft fog, the kind that makes sound feel distant and thoughts feel slow. Within the carriages, all was still, all was safe. And Andy's voice returned now, hushed and warm. Some tides return only once, others never leave at all. But the heart, it remembers, even what the mind forgets. So sleep now, dear traveller. Let the waves roll on. Let the wind whisper gently. You are not adrift. You are being carried, and the map you need is already inside you. Always was. Good night, old sailor. The stars were beginning to fade now, not vanish, just soften, as if they too were getting ready to sleep. The dream train glided through the last of the night clouds, its wheels silent, its windows glowing faintly with golden light. Inside, the passengers slept soundly. Elliot curled beneath the stars, a soft smile on his lips, the atlas of forgotten constellations still glowing gently beside him. Clara nestled once again in her garden hammock, a single green sprout glowing quietly near her shoulder, whispering of something just beginning. Mr. Lyle, resting by the lantern in his lighthouse car, the compass on the table before him, now gently ticking, like a heart made of brass, and Avery, asleep beneath a blanket of dreams she hadn't planned to find, her hand resting lightly on her chest, where a key once pulsed softly in the dark. The train slowed, not abruptly, just respectfully, like a lullaby reaching its final note, like a storyteller closing the final page. Outside, the early light of dawn kissed the horizon with a soft blush of gold, and ahead, once again, stood the old train station, quiet and glowing in the morning mist, the same one they had left, and yet not the same at all, because they were different now, and that changes everything. The doors opened with a sigh. No one rushed to leave. There was no need. This was not a goodbye. It was a gentle return. One by one, the passengers stepped off, some still half asleep, others pausing to look back at the carriages that had held their dreams. And as the sun rose slowly over the rooftops of the little village by the sea, the dream train disappeared, not with a roar, not with a flash, just quietly, as if folding itself back into the mist from which it came. Now, dear listener, it's just us again, you and me, Andy. I've been with you this whole time, through every breath, every soft turn of the track, every dream you stepped into without even realizing it. And before we part, I want to tell you something true. Rest is not a luxury. It is your birthright, your sacred space, your quiet return to who you truly are. You are not lazy for needing pause. You are not broken because you're tired. You are human, and you deserve softness, stillness, sleep. So whether your eyes are already closed, or still fluttering gently beneath the weight of the night, know this: you've made it to the end of the journey, and there's no rush to leave. You can stay here a while longer. Let the warmth linger. Let the hush carry you deeper, and whenever you need, the train station of dreams will always be there, waiting, with its soft lanterns, its quiet maps, its rooms of stars and petals and sea. It will wait for you, just like I will. Until then, sleep well, dream deep, wake gently, and know you are held, you are safe, you are home. Good night, traveler. Always, Andy.